Sarah FioRito, and I am the coordinator of Streets for Everyone, which some of you may have heard of. We are a community organization. We're very awesome, and I can tell you a little bit more about us in a second. But before I do that, I just want to quickly tell you a little bit about why I started working on this project. So I started doing research on this topic about a year ago. I live in the neighborhood. I shop on Commercial Drive every day. And I thought it was a little bit strange because I kept reading articles in the newspaper about where there was mention that cycling is bad for business and putting this sort of infrastructure on commercial streets is bad for business, and comments about congestion and things like that. And I thought, well, that's weird. That's conflicting completely with all the research that I'm reading. And it's conflicting completely with what a lot of the business owners who I talk to all the time want to see on the street, because they recognize that a lot of their customers want to access the street safely using bicycles and walking and things like that. So that's when I started interviewing people in the neighborhood to find out sort of what's going on here and what's the situation that's sort of making people maybe think a certain way or preventing people from being open to some of these investments. So really quickly, Streets for Everyone is a grassroots community group. So we've got business owners, we've got parents, we've got a whole bunch of different kinds of people who are really interested in the sorts of goals that we're talking about. And essentially, our mission is to build support for vibrant streets that are designed for all people. Super simple stuff, and we think that it's something that everybody can get on board with if they just sort of take a moment to really hear what we're talking about, because we think that it doesn't need to be contentious. This doesn't need to be like a certain users of the road versus other users of the road. This is something about making public spaces that work for all people in the neighborhood, including car drivers and people who need to park. So that's sort of where this came out of. Now, some of you might have heard that we have been talking about some ideas for Commercial Drive. And one of the things that I really want to say is that, we, like every person in this room, care a lot about Commercial Drive. I can say that I walk up and down Commercial Drive on a daily basis. I shop on Commercial Drive on almost a daily basis. We want to see every single business on Commercial Drive. Well, there's, yes. I was going to make a joke about Starbucks, okay. We want to see every single business on Commercial Drive do well. We want to see that every established business can stay in the neighborhood and be here with us. So I just want to really let you all know that we're on your side, business owners. And if I haven't had a personal conversation with you yet, I would like to. We want you to do well. So please know that. So really, I had a... interesting. Okay, so I'm going to go into the specific design proposal that we have for the drive. But what I want to say before that is we do have a couple key criteria that we really want to stick to as we move forward with this campaign. And because we feel that every single person in this community should be able to access Commercial Drive safely and comfortably using their mode of choice, we think that there's a couple things that are non-negotiable for Commercial Drive. And one of those is a protected bike lane. So like Kay said, we think that people shouldn't have to be brave to get to access Commercial Drive and go shopping and do whatever they want to do on Commercial Drive using a bicycle. The other thing that we want to see is shorter crossing distances at intersections so that pedestrians can more easily cross the street. I see you shaking your head, and we'll get to your questions soon. The other thing that we want to see is priority for buses, because it's one of the busiest bus routes in the city, and we think that's important. And then we're going to be talking maybe about some seating options and things that will just make it a better public space. So one of the things that we've been doing is we've actually been actively participating in the Granby Woodland community planning process. So as many of you know, every 30 years, communities undergo a community planning process. In Granby Woodland, we have a 48-person randomly selected citizens assembly. We presented to them last week. A lot of them really liked our ideas, so we're really excited, and we see this as a huge opportunity to do something which is set a precedent for the city. So we have a really unique community here. We think that it's about time that we got some really strong policy into one of the documents here, the community plan, to really set a precedent for the city and say, hey, let's start designing our important streets so that everybody who uses the street can access it. So you might have seen us, we were actually out on Car Free Day and Streets for Everyone, and we've been engaging with the community since then. So what we've been doing is we've been talking to people for many months now, talking to people about what they'd like to see on the street. And if you saw us at Car Free Day, we had a 50-meter installation. The kind people at Car Free Vancouver gave us some space to sort of engage with the community. And we talked to thousands of people that day and got some really good input. And one of the most exciting things that day was that thousands of people came up to us and said, we love your ideas. We want to see this happen on the street. I'm scared to take my son.
I gotta say,
sorry, Nick,
I just want to make a comment to this point, because
I'm sorry, Okay, thanks. So one thing I want to clarify, because I think it might answer Nick's question, is one thing that Nick asked at the beginning. So when we're talking about these design proposals that we're putting forward for Commercial Drive, we're talking about the wider part of the street between 15th and Gravely. So the street does narrow, as many of you know, and we are not talking about the narrow part of the street. One reason being that we think that, it's too contentious at this point. And we think that right now, because we have Salisbury just adjacent to the street, we think that that's a way for people to cross first and get onto another street that they feel safer on. So part of the street that we're talking about is the part of the street that has a lot more space to work with. Okay, so I just want to clarify that. So one thing that we're doing at Streets for Everyone is we're just trying to highlight, because we think that a lot of people maybe don't realize how many people in the community and how normal it is to actually get around not using a car. And one of the reasons that Kay touched upon was it's because actually a lot of the main network for bicycle users in the city are on off streets right now, right? So we push them onto residential streets. And so what that means is it's actually a lot of people that maybe are getting around in cars don't actually realize that such a large percentage of people in our community are getting around in other ways. So on our social media, we've sort of just been showing, sort of different ways that people are using the street and kind of highlighting the way that people sort of are doing different things. I like this photo in particular. So essentially, the point that I really want to make here, and I think that Case sort of touched on this, is essentially people's behavior in a city reflects the environment that we build. So we live in a city, it's a human-created environment. Everything that we have in the city, we decided to build. Somebody paid for it and decided to put it there at some point. It didn't just pop up there without a human influence. And so the point is that everything that we have in our city, we consciously are putting there. So why don't we decide what values we think are important and actually take those and make a conscious decision about what we want our city to look like? And I think that's really important moving forward, right? So it's true, maybe Commercial Drive looks a certain way and has looked a certain way for a long time. Maybe every street in Vancouver has, but maybe that's not something that we're okay with. Sure, we've had, car-centric city planning for decades now, but is that what we want? Does that reflect the, environmental, social, and other values that we think are important? I don't know. Maybe it does for some, maybe not for others. So I actually just wanted to put it forward to you guys because I think it might be sort of an interesting exercise. And I'm actually curious to hear how people would define a street. And I'm just curious if anyone here would like to take a gander at defining street. Louise, yeah.
I was just going to say, I think it's different how you get around. Because when I'm walking, I'll run into friends. When I'm cycling, I'll wave and run into friends. If I'm ever using a vehicle, the less interactive. So I think for me, obviously, a street is where I see people in my community, and I go through space. But I think it's different depending on how you get around.
I'd like to see a lot more pedestrian streets, because when I was in Europe, I would go to areas where they had pedestrian streets, and they were wonderful, and then you go to a car street, and you smoke and everything, and just I'd like to see a lot more pedestrian streets.
Yeah, I agree. Anyone else? Okay. So I've taken a moment to sort of distill kind of at Streets for Everyone maybe what we're kind of working with when we define street. And essentially, what we understand street to be is the public space that's between private space. So it's really all the area between buildings is the street. And that's all publicly owned. It's owned by all of us. And therefore, we feel that it should reflect what everybody in the community's needs are. So, and also not just what everybody in the community's needs are, but also the sorts of things that we want to see happening on the street. So, you know, the sorts of values that we have, and also the interactions and behaviors that we'd like to see. Maybe right now, a lot of people get around by car, but maybe we want to encourage them to get around another way. I don't know. Maybe that's something we need to talk about. So, what I really want to point out here is just that our understanding of streets is fluid. Our use of streets has been changing for decades. It's actually quite a recent phenomenon that cars have had such prominence on streets. It's actually only a decades-old phenomenon. This is actually a commercial drive. This is actually a photo of Commercial Drive from back in the day. So, as you can see, you know, streets haven't always looked the same. They won't always look the same. And I think that's something that we ought to be keeping in mind as we move forward, because I think that, you know, saying, well, it's this way and it's been this way for, you know, such and such amount of years is not necessarily a reason to not move forward and do something new. So one of the things that's become really clear to us is that Commercial Drive's design does not reflect the use of Commercial Drive. So I'm actually quite proud of myself for capturing this fine picture, and one of the reasons is it actually really grabs a lot of things that I think are really important in this conversation. So one thing that we see is that woman, and this pinch point is actually about a block from where I live. This woman is actually walking in the street because right there's quite a small pinch point on the sidewalk. So you actually often need to step off of the sidewalk into the street to actually get to where you're going. That's really problematic. Another thing that we can see is you've got, you know, a person on a scooter, you've got a stroller, you've got, you know, another person, two people in helmets. So this is really showing how diverse the use is of Commercial Drive. And, you know, after a long time, decades of very car-centric city planning, maybe it's time that we start actually looking at how people are using the street and go forward from there. So these ideas that we're bringing forward, and the idea of, you know, one of which is to put a protected or, you know, a separated bike lane on the street. These ideas are not ours. Some of them are ours, but a lot of them actually have a precedent in city policy. So in the Transportation 2040 plan, there was talk of putting a all ages and abilities bike lane on Commercial Drive. It was also in the emerging directions of the community plan. So one of the reasons we started working on this was because we said, so many people are cycling in here. So many people are using the street this way. What's the holdup?